it is.
There's a vacuum on the Republican side right now for that strong presence to kind of lead them, which they so obviously gravitate towards. And that actually leads me to an interesting, question I had for you, Mike. I was actually just watching your great video about the poll out, suggesting that a lot of Republicans would actually, get into this Patriot Party thing. If Donald Trump were to start Patriot Party, I think somewhere like 65% of Republicans, according to this Harris Hex poll, Hill Harris X or whatever the fuck it's called. Their poll said that like 65% of Republicans would join. And you made a great point, Mike, in your video that, even if this were to happen and this Patriot Party were to emerge from Donald Trump, really, it would just give the Democrats an excuse to embrace figures like Mitt Romney, these never Trumpers, welcome them into their fold, and then just allow the Republican Party to become even more extreme, because eventually probably the Patriot Party would just kind of become the new Republican Party. At least that was your analysis. And I'm interested to hear your opinion on that, what you think the future of the GOP is, because obviously right now it's in complete shambles. It's looking like, the Democrats definitely have control of Washington with the Senate, the House, and the presidency. And despite the fact that they're, screwing up, as I mentioned, the checks and, the beginning of Biden's presidency isn't exactly, as triumphant as some would have hoped. I'm just wondering what you think the path forward is for the other side of the aisle. It seems to me like they're in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah, that is a really, really long conversation, and it really can end up in a number of ways. So everything that I'm saying is kind of speculative, but I think that ultimately this is going to cause a shift in the Overton window further to the right. Like, I feel like we've kind of made a little bit of progress yanking it to the left. But I think that ultimately Trump is a figure that, like it or not, he's really popular. He has a cult following. So what he chooses to do going forward is going to have a pretty significant impact on American politics. So if he creates this Patriot Party, I think a lot of liberals and even leftists are cheering because they think, well, look, that's great news for us, because then we don't really have to worry about Republicans winning. Because if you have 50% of the party going to Republicans and the other 50% going to the Patriot Party, that means that Democrats will always have a plurality. So threat neutralized, right? But except I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case. Short term, sure. A couple of elections, maybe that happens. Long term, however, what we've seen is there always is going to be a consolidation of two major parties. And it's because of the electoral system that we have, which is a terrible system, by the way, that definitely needs to be changed. But what we end up likely will see from this is either the Republican Party will absorb the Patriot Party or vice versa. And, party realignment, that's something that I've been thinking is on the cusp or on the horizon for a while now. My thought or my hope really was that if Bernie Sanders would have become the Democratic Party nominee, that would catalyze party realignment in the sense that all of the liberals and or the conservative Democrats in the party, they wouldn't like Bernie Sanders. They don't want a socialist being the standard bearer, so they'd flee. They'd go to the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party would kind of be cleansed of the worst actors like, Joe Manchin and whatnot. But what we could see is party realignment on the other side, where, Trump's new party is such a turnoff to a lot of conservatives that the bases of folks like Susan Collins, Mitt Romney feel inclined to jump ship. And, Mitt Romney and Susan Collins are going to do what they think is best representing their constituents if they want to get elected. So they're going to flee and go to the Republican Party. And rather than rejecting the Republican Party, we know what Democrats are going to say. They're going to give us the same song and dance. Well, we're a big tent party, so we welcome everyone, including conservatives who are against our supposed ideology. And so,
just don't ever go back and watch any campaign footage from 2012, because then you're not going to like what you hear about Mitt Romney.
Right. Exactly. And so it's hard to say what's going to happen, but ultimately, if this ends up leading to a shift in the Overton window and Democrats getting even more conservative, that would be obviously terrible, because I don't think that we have any time to even deal with this bankrupt, ideology of conservatism, trickle-down economics. We have like less than 10 years to act on climate change. So we should be going in the opposite direction. And again, I don't know what's going to happen. This is all speculative. Sure. But if I had to guess, I'd say that the Patriot Party is going to be better for the more far-right extremists than everyone else long-term.
Do you think that there's anyone in particular? Are there any people that you're kind of monitoring right now that you think could inherit or carry on what Donald Trump, whatever you want to call his, thing, carry on that Trumpian spirit on the Republican side? Because that's what I'm interested in. And I'm really interested to see who the GOP nominates in 2024. Something I thought was hilarious that I wanted to get your reaction to was the potential of Miss Candace Owens saying she's going to run for president. Again, the hilarious state of the GOP, if this is their, potential standard bearer or whatever. But I mean, some people think she could have a chance. I mean, the Republicans nominated Donald Trump, so it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that they would, go for another celebrity type candidate.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. Like, there's a lot of folks that laugh at all these these people. Like, I remember when Kanye West announced that he was running for president, people were like, "Oh, this is so stupid." But like deep down, I'm like, he could win. No, he only got like 6,000 votes or whatever it was. But if he ran,
that was an organizational issue, I think, not a popularity issue.
I agree with that totally. I think if he ran in like a Republican primary, he could really be a front runner.
Candace Owens, Kanye West, 2024. No, I'm just
look. I'm not going to discount her. She's crazy, but the base of the Republican Party loves crazy. So like, all she has to do is play the greatest hits. Immigration bad, left wokeism bad, and she'll do phenomenal.
Exactly.
But in terms of like who can be the next Trump, it's hard to say. Like, you see a lot of folks really jockeying for that position. Like, you see Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz. They're trying to be the next Donald Trump. I think that there's not really going to be anyone who's going to be able to capture the magic. Recapture the magic, that is. If anyone's going to come close, it's probably going to be one of Trump's kids, like Ivanka or Trump Jr. Probably Trump Jr. because he seems to be the dumbest of all of them and is more Trumpian than them all.
Ivanka's kind of interesting, right? Because she seems almost too competent, right? Like, I don't want to act like a fan of Ivanka. Certainly, I'm not. But compared to her brothers, I mean, geez, she seems like she's almost too sophisticated. She's it's too easy to pass her off as an elite. Whereas her brothers are so oafish, so boorish, so of their father that of course that they're going to be taking a shit on a golden toilet while they eat a Big Mac, regardless of what their net worth is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. She is going to turn people off because she's too well spoken in the Republican Party. Like, they want someone who's like foaming at the mouth. They want a lunatic because they feel like that person is going to be a fighter and never back down.
Too.
Oh, it's totally entertaining. I think that like if you look at certain countries, whenever there's been like a really big charismatic figure like Donald Trump, that like the successor always has a difficult time like maintaining that base. Like, this is a bad example, but like North Korea, Kim Jong-un can't recapture the magic of his predecessors. Even like in Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, like if you've ever read his speeches, like the dude is brilliant at speaking. Like, he's Trumpian in the sense that he doesn't have a filter, but the things he said were actually meaningful. Like, Maduro has a difficult time kind of keeping that Chavista, base intact. And this is kind of what I think we'll see on the right with Donald Trump. Those are probably bad comparisons because those are different types of regimes. But like, what I'm saying is like, it's once you have a cult of personality, that personality really is the driving factor here. Yeah. So I think it's going to be difficult for Donald Trump to have a successor that does what he does. But if he does channel all of that into like some party or organization or super PAC as he created, it could work, but never to the extent that we saw like in the 2016 through 2020 era.
Yeah. I mean, one of our big nightmare situation that we've been kind of jokingly, talking about on the air is, Tucker Carlson decides to get in the ring for 2020. His massive popularity, his celebrity, and his understanding of what plays well in I
will say though, and I share that concern because I do think he could, bridge that gap between the more like populist, whatever you want to call it, Republicans and the more elitist ones. However, I will say, and this just occurred to me, most of Tucker Carlson's like best hits or whatever you want to call it, those are read from a teleprompter, right? And the few times I have seen Tucker off a teleprompter, I recall a Politicon debate actually with Cenk Uygur. It wasn't actually as impressive as you might expect.
That's an interesting point.
So it would be interesting to see how Tucker Carlson performed in a Republican primary, and if he could maintain that kind of energy he has when he is scripted, because I don't know if he could actually defend his ideas in a debate if he's not just reading off a teleprompter. It would be interesting to see, and I certainly think he's one of the people that could definitely absorb some of those Trump voters for sure, were he to run, just because, I mean, they have a personal relationship with him. They literally watch him every night probably. So of course they're going to trust him, that's kind of how things work, especially, for conservatives, and they just listen to these commentators or Rush Limbaugh, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. I don't think I watched the debate with Tucker Carlson and Cenk Uygur. So I'm actually kind of curious to see how he speaks off the script. Like my first reaction to Tucker Carlson, or my first introduction to him, was the viral clip of Jon Stewart. Like,
I was just going to bring that up on Crossfire.
Yeah, on Crossfire, shitting on him, making a fool of himself.
And Jon Stewart had his way with him too. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he's not good at like debating and defending his ideas, and he's only good when he's reading off of a teleprompter, that could be a disaster. I do worry because the politics that Tucker Carlson is he uses, look, Tucker Carlson is one of the most effective propagandists in the history of American political discourse. And that's not a compliment to him. It speaks to, I think, the danger that he poses, because the way that he uses like certain issues, it's like he gives himself plausible deniability. Like I'm going to talk about a segment that he did on my program. I haven't prepped it yet, but basically the gist of it is he uses COVID-19 to fearmonger about immigrants, which is really interesting. So we've seen like the clips of Tucker Carlson downplaying COVID-19. He's like elevated these videos of quack doctors use like skewed data to suggest that it's not that serious, right? But in this clip in particular, he's taking it very seriously. He's, saying liberals are correct about this and that. Like, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he's using that to then move to the point that, well, since COVID is serious, why is Joe Biden instituting catch and release again, an Obama-era policy where immigrants are released into American society? They're going to spread COVID to everyone. So this is so nefarious because, if you just think like at face value from the standpoint of like a leftist, how do you respond to that? You think, wow, well, I guess he's right. COVID is serious. I take it seriously as a leftist, and I don't hate immigrants, but maybe we should like curtail immigration in this instance. It's really nefarious, dark stuff, but it's brilliant. Like, if you don't know any better, you could easily be duped by him, and he'll use like populist rhetoric to, suggest that he wants a welfare state. But if you really dive into the details, that welfare state is to the exclusion of people of color. Like, if you really look at his philosophy,
it's the Josh Hawley kind of game plan.
Totally. So he is a dangerous figure. But again, if he's not charismatic off script, that could hurt him. But he's someone like these folks, like Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley. I fear them more than Donald Trump, because I think that if you're an effective fascist, that is a lot worse, obviously, than someone who's just kind of a bumbling idiot like Donald Trump.
Lazy. Like, some of these guys have ambition, right? Like Donald Trump had no sense of ambition at the White House. He wanted to get his fancy, footage. He wanted to get pictures that he can frame at Mar-a-Lago from when he was president, right? I mean, it's so surreal, kind of the way that he treated the presidency, like his own amusement park. Like, it was just like the world was like his own, television show for 4 years. It really is baffling to me. And now that it's over and we're reflecting on it, it's just, wow, it really does kind of melt your brain.